Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for popping in a little bit early tonight, Misty. Hope you're doing okay. Jimmy going to be able to join us. Cynthia, good to see you. Janice, glad you're here. Jeff and Jill are watching. Good to have you. I'm going to do something crazy tonight. At least I'm going to think about attempting something crazy. Because we are starting with Genesis 29. And I'm definitely doing 29, and I'm going to try to do 30. Yeah, and I might try to do 31. Hey, boy, Matthew just came to visit today, so he is on his way home. Probably stopped to get coffee, and that's why he's able to say hello. Good to see you, boy. So we're definitely doing 2 chapters tonight, and if I can do, and they're long chapters. I probably can't get to the 3rd, but anyway, what's a goal without? We don't want to just have easy goals, right? We want to have some difficult goals. Ben, good to see you. Cheryl is sitting next to me, as she is typically doing. Sue from St. Joe Mo says they had some snow. Glad that you are here. We are going to start at 7:05 today. Got some folks over on YouTube as well. Good to see you. Hope you're doing okay. No snow for us, but we might get some ice tomorrow. Eh. This weather report doesn't say. 20% chance of precipitation. Snow possible on Thursday, though. Matthew and I are playing some ping pong outside this afternoon as the cold front started working its way through, and it got pretty cold pretty quickly. Two minutes after the hour. Will it be raining overnight from Wednesday to Thursday? Let's see. It's not giving me precipitation by, oh, here we go, precipitation. So on Wednesday, actually at 8 p.m., there's a 44% chance of precipitation, but then it goes down to midnight. And it looks like the highest chance of precipitation is Thursday morning at about 5 a.m. when it's at 56%, and then it goes down from there. So who knows? Yeah, I know, Janice. This is the time of year where you got to run the heat one day, part of the day, and then the air conditioner the other part of the day. It's crazy. We had our air on today as well. In fact, I think it's on right now, although I don't think it's actually running. "52 outside. It better not be running." All right, 7:03, couple minutes, and we are going to get started. Part of the neat thing about what we're going to be reading is we've talked so much about how these passages just continue to mirror previous passages. And in the past, we've talked about the significance of those things that happened. And so we don't have to go into it deeply as we read the thing that mirrors what happened with Abraham and Sarah, for instance. We can just remember what that is, and we don't have to go as deeply into it, which is why I think we're going to get through quite a bit of this story today. Yep, bring in your plants. That's why I don't have any and don't ever want any. Although we are going to plant some herbs. But maybe this season that we plant the herbs will be such that they will never freeze. I don't know. I got Cheryl one of those little stand-up herb garden thingies. Let's see if I can find it. Got her one of those. Veg Trug 8-pocket herb garden. So we're going to set that outside. And hopefully she'll enjoy it. All right, it's 7:05. Let's get going. Hopefully some more people will join us, and they'll just have to catch up with us as we move through our scripture this evening. So we are looking at Genesis 29. So the latest thing that happened is Jacob dreamed about the ladder. So we had the story of Jacob's ladder. So if you missed that, go back to chapter 28 and read through that. Let's look at chapter 29. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field and 3 flocks of sheep lying there beside it. For out of that well, the flocks were watered. So there's one well, and that's where they water all of the sheep. And whoops, that's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. There's one well where they water all the sheep. So it's a really good well, but it has a problem. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. So the fact here that it says the shepherds, not a shepherd, this was a large well, and it took a strong person, a strong group of people to move it, according to the commentary that I've read. I think this is really interesting because listen to what happens. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" They said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, son of Nahor?" Remember, he was sent to Laban, son of Nahor, by his father Isaac, who was encouraged by his wife, Jacob's mother, Rebekah, because she couldn't tolerate the thought of him marrying a Canaanite woman. So she wanted him to go back and marry one of their kinsmen from that area. So he wanted to make sure he was where he was supposed to be. And so they are. Haran was where he was going. He said to him, "Do you know Laban, son of Nahor?" They say, "We do." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" "Yes," they replied, "and here is his daughter Rachel coming with the sheep." And much like with Rebekah for Isaac, it is love at first sight. Although perhaps Jacob's sight, maybe he needs glasses, but not because of Rachel. We'll get to it. He said, "Look, it's still broad daylight. It's not time for the animals to be gathered together." water the sheep, and go pasture them. So, hang on a second. So, sorry, I'm lost. Let me find it. Okay, so basically he's saying, look, it's not time. You know, the animals would all get together and kind of graze and do what they needed to do in the evenings. During the day, they just got some water, you know, the heat of the day, they would come get water and leave. But this particular group of sheep and shepherds would all come together because this well put out so much water, and it took evidently some strong men together to move it, right? Because there's only, you know, maybe only one shepherd for a lot of sheep, and that one shepherd wasn't strong enough to move the rock by themselves. In fact, we're going to find out that I went to Jacob's Well in Wimberley this past weekend. Probably not the same well, but that's very cool. So we're going to find out that Rachel's actually a shepherd as well, which seems unusual to me, but here it is. While he was still speaking with them. Okay, so again, what Jacob wants, he sees Rachel coming, and what he wants is some alone time with Rachel. So he's saying, hey guys, let's water the sheep, and then you go back and do your thing, and you know, y'all just, you know, be my wingmen, hop out. I'd like to talk to Rachel. And but they answered, we can't until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep. So while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. She was a shepherd. Now when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his mother's brother Laban, he's hot for cousin Rachel, and the sheep of his mother's brother Laban, Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of his mother's brother Laban. They really want you to know he's keeping it in the family. Now, this is kind of interesting. Jacob, remember, is not really supposed to be the physically strong person, right? He was he had the mental fortitude, but it was actually Esau who was the stronger, right? Because the weaker would serve or the stronger would serve the weaker. But evidently, Jacob is just so overwhelmed by Rachel that he's just able to do whatever he needs to do. So he waters the flock of his mother's brother Laban. And then Jacob kissed Rachel, as one does, and wept aloud. I mean, he's got it bad. He's into Rachel. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. When Laban, her father, heard the news about his sister's son Jacob, he ran to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him back to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things. Now, what does that mean? Why is that there? What did Jacob tell Laban? Why is this here, right here? Jacob told Laban about his travels. Jacob told Laban, well, it says all these things. So let's take this for its literal text here and say that it's literally all these things, meaning Jacob told Laban the whole story. He said, yeah, you know, I kind of got in trouble with my brother Esau because I kind of worked his birthright out from under him one time when he was pretty hungry, and then my father was going to bless him, and I snuck in and pretended to be him, and so he blessed me and said, and then Esau kind of got mad, and I kind of needed to get out a little bit, and my mother didn't really like the Canaanites anyway, so she sent me here to find someone to marry, and that's what I'm doing here, because it says he told Laban all these things. And I think as we find out how Laban treats Jacob, I think it's very possible and probable, and I think it informs our reading best if we assume that Laban knows about Jacob's own sort of brand of treachery. So, Laban said to Jacob, so some time has passed, evidently, or it's about to, and he knows that he's there and he's going to work for a while, or whatever the situation is exactly. Laban says to Jacob, because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? No, of course not. Tell me, what shall your wages be? What do you want me to pay you while you work for me? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And it will become important that the elder is Leah and that the younger is Rachel. Don't forget, Esau was the elder, right? He came out first. He had the birthright. And Jacob was the younger. So in the same way, you've got Leah and Rachel. He says, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Laban said, it's better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. So stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love that he had for her. He is so crazy head over heels in love with Rachel that he worked 7 years of his life to earn her hand in marriage, and it just seems like a few days. That is truly, that is the most undeniable kind of love. Imagine how well he must have known her at that point. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is completed, as one does. And she would be called his wife at this point traditionally because she is betrothed, and the title wife was given to those who were betrothed as well as those who were actually married. So he wants his wife so that he may go into her. I would call that a euphemism, but it's not even. It's just very directly what he wants. So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. He had a wedding feast. But in the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Okay, so how does this happen? We can assume here by sort of his outrage that is about to happen, that Jacob really did not know that it was not Rebecca. Now, you would think that maybe he'd talked to her a little bit, and maybe, maybe he could have felt if her arm was hairy or something. I don't know. There's this parallel with how he tricked his father, and that is the parallel here. And the way that he fooled his father to get his birthright, Laban fools him to wed his eldest daughter. So yeah, that's what happens. The other thing that's going on is that he was probably drunk. I think that is the point. Hang on just a second. Okay. There was probably a lot of alcohol involved, and so he was probably pretty well drunk at that particular time. And then there's also a tradition of being veiled. Although, as far as I understand tradition, once they were married, the veil would have been lifted. But nonetheless, I guess by the time he did that, it was pretty dark. They didn't have LED electric lights back then. Anyway, he ends up both marrying and going into the wrong woman. And then we have a little note here that says Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her maid. This is a very common thing. When a father marries off his daughter, he gives her one of his servants so that servant becomes her servant. And it's important that his maid is Zilpah, because her maid is going to come into effect here in very much the same way that Sarah's maid Hagar comes into effect. It just all repeats itself over and over and over again. So when the morning came, it was Leah. And I love that there's an explanation point here in my translation of the scripture. I don't know how Hebrew works in this case. They did not have punctuation. I know that in Greek, they would repeat the word, which is one reason where when Jesus is talking to Mary and Martha, and he says, Martha, Martha, you are busy with many tasks. I don't think he actually said Martha, Martha. I think he said Martha, like trying to get her attention because she's going off on something irrelevant. Hey, Kim, good to see you. Glad you're here. Glad you were listening as you drove home. So anyway, it's an explanation point, which is not something you see very often in the Old Testament. It was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, what is this that you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me? Laban said, oh, this is not done in our country, giving the younger before the firstborn. Just complete the week of this one. There was a whole wedding, marital consummation that lasted for a week. So he basically says, consummate this marriage for the week, and then I will give my daughter Rachel to you. You'll just have to work for another 7 years for me. So Laban is really, he got Jacob good, but did Jacob not deserve it? He gets fooled in very much the same way that he fooled his father. And again, there's that parallel. Now, the person who did not deserve it was Leah, obviously. But anyway, Jacob was fine with this, or it wasn't really, it happened. So Jacob did so. He completed the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. And then it says, Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her maid. So she gets a gift as well of a servant. And so Jacob went into Rachel also. And he loved Rachel more than Leah. Now, of course, he's going to love Rachel more than Leah. He wasn't interested in marrying Leah in the first place. This isn't fair, it's not fair to him, but of course he has not treated others fairly. And while we do not believe karma as a doctrinal, theology, I think there's an awful lot of what goes around comes around. And I think this is why I think that Laban probably knew the whole story about how Jacob manipulated the situation with his older brother. And so Laban felt kind of okay with doing this, because he certainly doesn't ever apologize for it. But he was always into Rachel. He loved Rachel. He wanted Rachel. He worked for her for 7 years, and now he's willing to work for her for another 7 years. That's how much he loves her. Working 14 years before he can be freed. But he did. But the scripture says he loved Rachel more than Leah. He served Laban for another 7 years. Now the Lord feels bad for Leah. The next passage of scripture says, when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and that word is a possible mistranslation. It could simply mean was the lesser, so that he loved her less, right? Because he does say, the scripture says he loved Rachel more than Leah. It doesn't say he didn't love Leah. So unloved may be a little strong here, but basically when the Lord saw that Leah was the underdog, that Jacob loved her less, he opened her womb, but he closed Rachel's. It just says Rachel was barren, but in this theology, if a woman gives birth, it's because God has opened her womb, and if a woman does not give birth, it's because God closed her womb. Period. End of story. So Leah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Reuben. For she said, because the Lord has looked on my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. And the name Reuben means a son. So the Lord's looked upon my affliction, and now my husband will love me. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard, and the word heard here in Greek is shama, because the Lord has heard that I am hated. I don't think we have evidence that this has happened, but that's how she feels. He's given me this son also, and she named him Simeon, which was related to the word Shama, which is herd. Again, she conceived and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will be joined, which is Iowa, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, he was named Levi, which is related to that word as well. Is actually, sorry, it was Lawa, not Iowa, Lawa. So named Levi. She conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise the Lord. And the word praise here is Hodah. And therefore she named him Judah. And then she ceased bearing. So Leah gives Jacob 4 sons. Now, this should have been very important to Jacob. Remember, Jacob is the one who's more concerned about the family line. So knowing that Rachel is barren, he should have been really thrilled that the whole thing with Leah had happened so that he could continue his line. This was something that was important to him. Now, when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. And she said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Jacob became very angry with Rachel and said, am I in the place of God who has withheld you from the fruit of the womb? It's not fruit of the loom. That's a different thing. The fruit of the womb. So she said, as one does, here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, that she may bear upon my knees, and that I too may have children through her. So just like when Sarah is unable to provide a son for Abraham, she tells Abraham to go into her maid Hagar, and Hagar conceives and gives birth to Ishmael. Now that causes really bad blood between Sarah and Hagar. But that is not going to happen in this particular case. She gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife. Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son. So she's really just taking Bilhah's son with Jacob as her own. And so she named him Don. And Don means he judged. So God has judged me. God's judged me to be worthy. And so God gave me a son, right? Because if you're a good person, good things happen to you. And this son being born to Rachel after being barren for all these times, even though he wasn't really born to Rachel, he was born to her maid. She still takes it. So she thinks that God has judged her to be worthy. And so Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings, I have wrestled with my sister. And that word is Niftal, and have prevailed. So she named him Naphtali. So we definitely have a little bit of genealogy going on here. We're going to find out the name of 11 of the 12 sons of Jacob. And if you don't know already, this is going to be extremely important in the history of the Israelites. So with every name, we're given sort of an etiology of why that person was named that particular name. I don't know that that in and of itself is important to us, but it was very important to them. Okay. So Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, so she took her maid Zilpah, as one does, and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, good fortune. And the word fortune is Gad. So she named him Gad. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I. The word for happy is Asher. For the women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. So again, that same kind of thing. Okay, continuing on. By the way, we're already through 29 and into 30. When Leah saw, I'm past that. In the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, is it a small, and let's just get this clear. Rachel said to Leah, so now Leah says to Rachel, is it a small matter to you that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? Just weird. I mean, she didn't take the husband away. She has to know that the whole thing was deception to begin with. And now she's talking about this this plant that's part of the nightshade family and saying, you already took my husband. Are you going to take my son's plants too? It's a bizarre thing to say. Rachel said, then he may lie with you tonight for your son's mandrake. So, as one does, Rachel says to her sister, who's also married to her, I told you last week, don't marry sisters. Anyway, so yeah, even trade, right? You can sleep with my husband. I mean, he's your husband too. Just give me your son's mandrakes. So when Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes, as one does. Wife goes out to the husband and says, hey, you've been hired out tonight. Give me some. I mean, I'm not being any cruder than the scripture is. Cheryl's probably giving me a dirty look, but I mean, this is as blatant as it could possibly be. I mean, let's read that again. You must come into me, for I've hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he laid with her that night, and God heeded Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Well, Rachel, was that worth some plants? Leah said, God has given me my hire, okay, which the word there is sakar. God has given me my hire because I gave my maid to my husband, so she named him Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. I assume Leah got some more plants out of that one too, but it doesn't say. But Leah says, God has endowed me with a good dowry. Now my husband will honor me, and the word honor is Zabal, because I've borne him six sons, so she named him Zebulun. Afterwards, she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. So, how would you like to be the youngest of all the children and be the girl? But there's one more. There's actually two more. One is not mentioned, I don't think. We'll find out. But let's go back here. Then God remembered Rachel, and God heeded her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she named him Joseph, which means he adds, saying, may the Lord add to me another son. This is Joseph with the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. This is Joseph, who will now become, not just yet, but very soon will become the core of pretty much the rest of the book of Genesis. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a soap opera. It's a soap opera for sure. Okay. So I want to make sure I get this right. With the birth of 11 sons and one daughter to Jacob, okay, and his wives, Leah and Rachel, and their maids, Bilhah and Zilpah, okay? So there is one other son that will be born later, and that will make 12 sons altogether, okay? Susan says, "What a stud." Yeah, literally. That's kind of what he was. Hired out, as the same way that equine studs are hired out today. That 12th son will be Benjamin. Really, Benoni is the word. I don't think I can get to the footnote that I need to. This is going to be 5 chapters away, and so I'm kind of just remembering this from my history. If I get it wrong, I'll correct it when we get to it. But as I recall, is it Rachel? I don't want to screw this up. Hold on. It's Rachel. Yeah, it has to be Rachel. Rachel gives birth to another son, and she dies during childbirth, and that child is called Benjamin. Okay, so we have 12 sons. I'm confused about one thing, and I just want to make sure I don't mess this up. Yeah, I just looked up something and it was just wrong. There are 12 tribes of Israel. You all know that, right? You might not know the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, but let me tell you what they are, and you tell me if they sound familiar. The 12 tribes of Israel are Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali, Joseph, and Benjamin. Any of that sound familiar? So yeah, this is where the 12 tribes of Israel come from. Okay. When Rachel had born Joseph, so now he's got 12 kids at this point, right? He's got 11 sons, he's got a daughter. Jacob says to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own home and country." What about the sister? She's still part of the whole thing right now. They're all going to go together. The 2 sisters, they're maids, whom the women gave to him as wives. So Leah gives birth to Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. Her maid Zilpah gives birth to Gad and Asher. Rachel gives birth to Joseph, and then later Benjamin, and her maid gives birth to Dan and Naphtali. So, again, Joseph is going to be the most important person in terms of the history of the Israelites, and he is a daughter of Rachel. And I think that is probably significant. Does that answer your question, Ben? I may have misunderstood it. So after Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know very well the service I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If you'll allow me to say so, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I'll give it." So he's saying, basically, "Nah, you don't need to go anywhere. I by divine rights, I know that I've been blessed because of you. So just name your wage and I'll pay it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I've served you and how your cattle have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turn. But now then shall I provide for my own household also?" He said, "What shall I give you, Jacob?" Jacob said, "You will not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again feed your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages." Okay? So he's going to take all the you know, there's not really an impurity of animal at this point, but you know, two white sheep when they mate and they have a sheep, that sheep is going to be white. Two speckled sheep, when they mate, that sheep is going to be speckled. So so he says, my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen. So he just says, give me the off-color ones. I'll take care of them. And in this whole time, I'll still take care of yours. Okay. And I think this is like another 7 years that he does this. Let me see if I can find that really quickly. Well, let's just keep reading. My honesty will answer for me later when you come to look at my wages with you. If there's any goats there that's not speckled and spotted, you'll know that I stole that goat. If there's any lamb that's not black, you'll know that I stole it. So that way you'll know that I'm being very, very honest. Laban said, good! Explanation point, by the way. Good, let it be as you have said. And so that day, Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons, and set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob was pasturing the rest of Laban's flock. Laban's not a nice guy. Do you see the deception that he's involved in here too? He's basically just giving him male goats and female sheep, and they're not going to be able to breed. So there was this idea at the time that if you took speckled rods, let me just read it. Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the rods. He set the rods that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the rods, and so the flocks produced young that were striped, speckled, and spotted. So this was the superstition at the time that if animals were looking at striped and speckled and spotted things while they bred, they would have striped, speckled, and spotted offspring. Okay, and he put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob laid the rods in the troughs before the eyes of the flock that they might breed among the rods. But the feebler of the flock, he didn't lay them there, so the feebler Laban's and the stronger were Jacob's. So this is a little confusing, but basically he just out-deceives Laban. You know, Laban's not really paying attention. He's trusting Jacob to do what he wants. And remember, Jacob is super smart. That's his superpower, right? He mustered up the strength to roll the stone away for the well to water Rachel's flock at the very beginning of this ordeal. But his super power is his intelligence. And so through his intelligence, he breeds incredibly strong striped, speckled, and spotted goats and black sheep, and the incredibly weak ones for Laban. So now we're in chapter 31. Hey, Dorothy, I didn't see you on, but I'm glad you're here. Hope you're doing okay. How long is chapter 31? It's too much. We're not going to go through 31. It's too much. Let me give you a little idea of what's to come. Basically, Laban's sons get upset at Jacob, and Laban kind of turns against Jacob, and he doesn't like him anymore. And so God says, you know what, Jacob? Now's a pretty good time for you to go back home. So you do that and I'll take care of you. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah, both of them, and their maids into the field where his flock was. And he said to them, your daddy doesn't like me none, as the Call and Ray song goes. But the God of my father, I love this, the God of my father, he still perhaps has not yet accepted Yahweh as his God, but he accepts him as the God of his father. He says, the God of his father has been with me. You know that I served your father with all my strength, but your father's cheated me. He's changed my wages 10 times, but God did not let him harm me. So basically, God takes away the livestock of his father and gives it to Jacob, except for Jacob kind of manipulated that, if you believe the superstition. Anyway, that's what's going to happen. So Jacob's going to tell them about another dream that he had. And anyway, they're all going to escape, and they're going to take off, and they're going to go back home. And basically, Laban is going to know... Laban's own daughters are going to be deceptive to him, especially Rachel. And eventually Laban and Jacob will part ways as not allies, not friends, but they make a non-aggression pact, basically. And they go from there. So that's what we've got coming up. But my voice is kind of tired. We read through 2 whole chapters tonight, so I hope that was good. You guys have any questions I can answer? How was the pace? Was it too much? I don't think it was too much. But I wasn't trying to learn it as I was saying it. This stuff is not very deep, and anytime there's something deep that does happen, it's something that's already happened before, and we went into detail when it happened before. So, just crazy stuff. It is quite an adventure. And once we get into Joseph, I mean, we're not done with Jacob for another 5 chapters. Rachel dies in 35, and then we're going to talk about Esau's descendants for a little bit. And then in chapter 37, Joseph is going to have his dream. And then I think it's basically all Joseph there until the end of Genesis. Yep. That is exactly what happens. All right, everybody. Thank you. Let me get back to where I want to be. Genesis 31 is where we're going to start next week. Yeah, I know. Spoiler alerts. Just kind of letting you know what's going to happen. So I hope to see you next Tuesday. I don't think anything's coming up anytime on any Tuesdays that's going to stop us from meeting. Nope, I got Tuesdays clear forever on my calendar. So we'll keep going. All right, everybody, that's it for tonight. Then if you have any questions, feel free to send me a private message on Facebook or send me an email or just call me. I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can. If I don't know the answers, I will either make something up or I will look for it. Mostly I'll just look for it. I try not to make things up. Except for pronunciations. Pronunciations I make up all the time. All right, everybody, that's it then. God bless, Godspeed, and as always, yep, stay warm, be safe, and thanks for watching.